Hello everyone, hope you're doing super great. So today I'm going to show you how you can create patterns. Patterns are used to add texture and to add effects to your drawings. So let me quickly show you an example of an artwork I made, and I actually used this tone map, which is simply a pattern that has some gradients applied to it. Let me just get rid of the sketch layer so you can actually look at this character and see that this character has some nice shading. So if you actually zoom out of this, you can actually see what's happening right here. We're just using a simple pattern that's made of circles. So let's go ahead and jump to this file where I have some of these examples. These are all patterns, and what we can do is we can increase, we can reduce them just to give it an overall kind of texture. So we can always change them. So how do we create this, which is what we're going to do right now. So I'll go ahead and quickly reset Affinity Designer to the default settings. So I'll just go over here and say reset studio. So go to studio, reset studio, so I can have the layers, the navigator, and I'll have the assets and appearance panel docked right here. The first thing we want to do is to create a square document. So to do that, let's go to file and let's go to new. So I have one here called pattern, but let's go ahead and just create a new one just in case. So say for instance, what you need to do is to go over here and you make sure that it's square. So you can do 300 by 300 or 200 by 200. I like doing 400 by 400. So type in 400 by 400 and make sure it's on pixels, not inches or any other value. So now that you've done that, just go ahead and click create, and you should actually have a square document. Click on the magnet icon to turn on your snapping and go to view and say show grid. This will actually enable you to see the grid. If I actually zoom in, I can see that grid like so. And what I'm going to do next is to make sure that the ruler is available. If it's not, you can actually go here and say show rulers or do Control R, and let's click and drag this right here to the center of the document. Whenever you're close to the center of the document, it will automatically snap, but because this is a 400 by 400 document, I know the center is at this 200 mark for the X, and let's just go ahead and just drag in for our X, sorry, and that was for our Y, and we can just actually see the center of this document. So for instance, if I wanted to create a square repeating pattern, I'll just go ahead and pick up the shape. I'll just leave it at the default fill and stroke. Click here and just drag a square pattern shape. Now I know this is at the center, but in case you want to draw it directly from the center, you can hold shift and control and come over here and then click and drag. You will draw this shape right at the center and it will snap to these grids at the same time. You can also click on this drop down here and make sure snap to grid is clicked, in case you just want your shape to snap to this grid. So what I want to do right now is to change this fill to black, and you can pretty much use any color you want, but black gives it a it's actually much more visible. So I'll click on this shape, go over here with V, click on this shape and go to the fill and just change this to black. So what we're going to do next is to drag out this shape to each of the four corners. Basically we want it to repeat or loop itself. So to do that, I'll just hold Control and make sure you're selecting V or using the move tool. I'll just hold Control and drag this to the corner. So that's the first one till you see for the quarter of that square. Hold Control, drag this, and just do that same thing to the bottom here. And you can hold Control and do the same thing to the bottom here. And what we're going to do next is just go to File and say export. I like exporting it as a PNG file, but you can use JPEG or PNG, it doesn't really matter. And make sure when you're exporting it, you don't export it with a background, or else you'll have your shape with a background color. So if I click on export, I'll just call this square and click on save. Now let's create a new document, and once we have that, let's create a 1280 by 780 document. And what we're going to do is just click on a square shape and just drag it like so, and let's click on the gradient tool, the fill tool, sorry. And once we click on that, where it says the type, let's switch over to bitmap and let's look for our pattern We call that square. So let's click on square and click open, and you can actually see it's has square light here. Right here is quite large. So let's go to view and let's disable the grid. And what we can do is to just click on this vertical spot and hold shift, just so you can constrain this object. So it's actually rotating. If you hold shift, it shouldn't rotate, and that's how you can create a nice pattern. It's actually so cool. Let's go ahead and do another one. So if you want to do the same thing with the circle, it's pretty much the same thing. So let's go to our layers, and I'll just hold down shift and click this and press Ctrl G to group this, and I'll just call that rect. So let's go ahead and hide that, and let's drag in a circle. So click on the circle shape, and let's select our fill and set it to black without any stroke. And just right here at the center, let's hold shift and control, click and drag that till we get a size we want. I just like leaving it at this because it just takes over this shape right here, and this is a 100 by 100 pixel shape, because we can actually see the position right here. On the transform, I can click and drag the transform and just show you what I'm talking about right here. If I switch this to like 150, you actually see what happened. It's moving the position of that object. So I'll just set that to 100, and then for the width and height, if we set this to say 250, it's actually going to squish that shape. So let's undo that right here. So what I'm going to do next is repeat the same process. Press V to switch over to the move tool, hold Control, left click and drag till it snaps right here to the center. Basically, you want the center of the circle to be on this left quadrant. So hold on Control, and you can hold on Shift as well, and then drag this till you get this shape here. And then let's shift, hold Control and Shift, and let's drag this till we get the bottom quadrant. And let's hold down, we can even click on this one, hold on Shift Control, and we just drag this right here. So now that we have this shape, and what I want you to think about a repeating pattern is this. If you should fold this end to this end of the paper, you'd actually get half of this semicircle right here. You'll get the shape. And once you fold these four edges, you'll get the shape is at the center. Basically, if you wrap this edge, it'll give you the shape in the center. And that's how you can ensure that you actually have a good shape. And another thing is, in case you're exporting and you're seeing the white background, it's because you have this selected. Say, if for instance you're creating this new document, you can click on say transparent background, right? So this is going to have a transparent background, and it's the best way to use this object here. So let's just get back here. So that's something you should just keep in mind. So I'm just going to go to File and say Export, PNG, Export. I'll just call that CRC, and let's jump over here, and we can even change this. So let's go to bitmap and click bitmap, and let's click on our CRC and click open. Now this is all good and fine, but like I said, if we change the color of our background, it means our object has a white fill, which is not something we want. So to solve that problem, make sure that you create your document with a transparent background, such that when you have a you're trying to fill this with the gradient, if we come over here and I go to bitmap and I select this one I created without the white background, we can actually see the difference right here. So we just see how this looks like. And always you can zoom in and kind of like increase, hold down shift and just kind of like increase and decrease this guy, and we can rotate. Hold this edge, you can rotate this shape. So that's the one without the fill, and it's actually very good because that's what I used to create this one. It doesn't have a the white shape doesn't come in like this examples right here. This one comes with a white color, right? So to prove that, if I draw another shape like so, and I'll just change this fill to a color, and I'll just set this to black. You can see what I'm talking about right here. Our pattern has a white background, but over here, if we do the same thing, we can actually, I believe we can copy this and paste it over here. and send it to the back so you can actually see what I'm talking about right here. So we can see through the background, which is actually what you want. Again, to create a document with a transparent background, when you're creating your new document, say for instance you click on A4, make sure you click transparent background, and then you can set this to pixels, and then you can have a square pixel like 200 by 200 or 400 by 400. I believe even numbers actually help because you can divide them into two. So thanks very much. If this is helpful, give a like, subscribe to the channel. I do a lot of Affinity Designer stuff, do a lot of concept art as well. So feel free to let me know what you think.